Resourceful Designer, episode 144, 6 Mistakes Freelancers Make.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now your host. His favorite doctor is Tom Baker, the fourth doctor, Mark DeCote.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm happy you've joined me this week. In this episode, I'm going to talk about some of the mistakes that designers make when running their business. I'm also going to share my favorite resource for managing my websites. And at the end, I'll answer Chris's question about opportunities for 3D artists. But before I get to that, I want to remind you that time is running out if you want to become a founding member of the Resourceful Designer community. You have until December 31st to sign up via Patreon to become a Patreon supporter of Resourceful Designer at the $10 level or more to become a founding member of the community. Now, those who sign up for $25 or more will also be part of the new mastermind groups, which will be part of the community. And finally, anybody signing up at $50 or more will become part of my own private mastermind group. Now, this Resourceful Designer community will be a safe place where designers can communicate, discuss their business, gain insight, and help each other out. And these are all people who are very dedicated to growing their design business. Not to mention, I'm going to be doing monthly videos that you can take part in. These are not webinars where I'll just be talking. These will be joint videos where you can join in and we can talk, we can have questions, we can do Q&A sessions, discuss different things about the industry. It'll be all sorts of different things, but it's a communicative platform that we're all going to join in. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, and if you are interested in growing your business, become a founding member of the Resourceful Designer community by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/Patreon and signing up at one of the levels available there. You have until December 31st. And now, like I do at the beginning of every podcast, I like to share a little bit about what I've been up to. And in all honesty, I haven't been up to too much this week. My wife has been away at a conference for her work, which means I've been kind of a bachelor this week. And I don't know if I just took advantage of that, but I had some great intentions going into this week. I thought, well, my wife's not going to be home. And since the kids don't live here anymore, they're both away at post-secondary school. I was thinking, wow, I could forego my 9 to 5 that I normally work, and I could put in some extra hours at night, do a lot of things. I created a whole to-do list of all the things I wanted to do this week, and then I just completely forgot the whole thing. I mean, I did get whatever I needed to get done. I worked on my client stuff, did a little bit of work on a website, started work on a logo, finished off a flyer, but beyond the things that really needed to get done, I didn't do very much. I spent some time watching some YouTube videos, some of them design related, but like YouTube, most of the time you start off with good intentions and next thing you know, an hour or two has gone by of watching crazy things about what's happening in movies and you know how it is. But luckily this time of year isn't a busy time for me. I still have work, but there's not a whole lot of new stuff coming in. It's like that every year, going back to when I started my business. As we approach Christmas, there's less and less people thinking about websites or logos and that sort of thing, and it'll all pick up again in January. But overall, I had a fun week, just, I could say, maybe not as productive as I originally intended it to be. But I'm not complaining. And that's one of the perks of being a home-based designer. Those weeks where you just really don't want to do some work, you don't. And there's nobody breathing down your neck to do it. So that's been my week. Now, I'd like to share a resource of the week with you, and this one is, I know I've shared this many times before, but iThemes. And iThemes, in case you're unaware, makes several great resources that I use and I swear by. And this is all web-related, mostly for WordPress. And they use my favorite backup plugin, Backup Buddy, that I use to back up every single website I build, whether it's mine or a client site. I also use Backup Buddy for migration if I have to move a site from one place to the other. I also use it for sandbox sites where you can build a site at one place or make corrections, I should say, to a site on one sandbox and then push those corrections to the live site so you're not actually working on a live site. So I use Backup Buddy for all of that. There's also iTheme Security, which is the security plugin that I use to secure all websites that I build. It has some really, really good features that I love. It also makes it really easy to change a site to a secured site in HTTPS with a security certificate. The iTheme Security plugin makes it really easy. You just go in there, flip a switch, and your whole site becomes HTTPS. And finally, there's iTheme Sync, which is the program I use to maintain all my and my clients' websites. I say I use, but I set it up. But then my virtual assistant, once a month, she can log into iTheme Sync. It lists every website that I have under it, every plugin that needs updating, the themes, even if WordPress needs updating. And from that one dashboard, she can go through and update all my clients' websites. It is so easy. She can verify, make sure that all the backups are working properly. Everything from one simple dashboard. Now, the reason I wanted to share iThemes as the resource this week is until the end of the year, they're having their Christmas or holiday special, as they're calling it, where they're offering everything site-wide 40% off until December 31st. So if you weren't sure about Backup Buddy or iTheme Security or iTheme Sync, and you can try out iTheme Syncs for free. I believe the first 10 websites are free. After that, there's some pro plans, and of course the pro plans give you a little bit more options, but I originally started off with the free plan just to test it out, and I loved it, so now I'm a paying member of iTheme Sync, and it has saved me so much time and so many headaches, and it makes it really easy for my virtual assistant to handle all my sites for me on a monthly basis. So it's because of the 40% off sale until the end of the year that I wanted to share this resource with you. And I do have an affiliate link if you do decide to purchase Backup Buddy, iTheme Security, iTheme Sync, or any of the other products on iThemes. Please consider visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/iThemes, which will redirect you to the iThemes website. But in doing so, I make a small commission if you do decide to purchase from them. But that's not the reason I share this resource with you. I share it because I've been using them for years and I swear by them. Every single website I build has iThemes involved with them somehow. So that's this week's Resource of the Week. And now, 6 mistakes freelancers make. Now, right off the bat, some of you may be thinking, Mark, you're talking about freelancers? I thought you didn't like that term. And it's true. I don't like the term freelancers, but I did decide to use it because you know what? It makes for good search engine optimization. So when I say 6 mistakes that freelancers make, this is 6 mistakes that home-based designers, anybody who's running a solo business, whether you're doing it part-time or full-time, these are mistakes that designers make. Now, mistake number 1 is not using your downtime productively. And what I mean by that is anytime you're running a business from home or any sort of business, there's always going to be ups and downs, hills and valleys. Sometimes they're going to be busy, sometimes they're going to be slow. Well, those slow times, or when you have spare time, even if during the busy time, there might be time during your day where for some reason you just don't have very much to do. I know there's some weeks where I'm really, really busy and all of a sudden I find 2/3 of the way through the day, I've sent out everything I was working on for proofing and all that. And all of a sudden I'm looking and I've got a ton of projects on the go, but nothing I could actually be doing at that moment because everything is in my client's hands. And that produces some downtime. And during that time, you should be doing something productive with it. Take those opportunities to update your website. If there's some sort of networking event going on, try to go to it. Get to meet people. Take an online course or a tutorial. View some YouTube videos or take a paid class and learn something new. Experiment with some software you have. Most designers that use Photoshop only use a small percentage of what Photoshop is capable of. Take some time to fool around. Look at some different aspects of Photoshop that you never use, and maybe you'll learn something and you'll be able to use it on a future project. Just because you're working from home and you're not at a 9-to-5 job doesn't mean that you shouldn't be putting in a full day worth of hours for your business. Now, I'm one to talk. I just mentioned in the introduction to this episode how since my wife was away, so I guess it was a case of when the cat's away, the mouse will play. I didn't get a whole lot done, so I'm not even following my own advice here, but whenever you do have some downtime, one of the biggest mistakes that designers make is they don't put that downtime to good use in order to grow their business. So that's mistake number 1. Now, mistake number 2 is not building a team. I talked about this back in episode 77 of the podcast, which was titled Being a Self-Employed Designer Requires a Team Effort. And I talked about how you should grow a team around you who can help you grow your business. Now, I made the mistake when I first started my business of thinking that I needed to do everything myself. This is my business. I needed to do it. And if there was something that I couldn't do, then I didn't take on that project. And I actually missed out on a lot of great projects, and I missed working with some great potential clients because when they presented something to me, a job for me to do, it was beyond my ability. So I turned them down. Now, it took me a little bit of time before I learned that it's okay to ask for help as a designer. In fact, I also talked about that in an episode 45, which is titled, It's Okay for Graphic Designers to Ask for Help. Since I learned that lesson that it's okay to ask for help, I started to expand my circle. And now I have a list of illustrators, of copywriters, of programmers, of translators, and whatever else. I have a list of people that if I need something, if a client brings me a project, let's say because I live in Eastern Ontario here in Canada, I live right near the province of Quebec, which is French. If I have a client that wants to market to both the English and the French, I might have to hire a translator to do some of the translation for the website, the brochure, whatever. So I've got a list of people I can go to for that. Whenever I need a copywriter, I've got a list of people I can go to for that. These are all part of my team. It's not employees, they're not part of my business, but at least they're people I can turn to if I need something. Not to mention my virtual assistant that I mentioned just a little while ago when I was talking about iThemeSync, how once a month she goes in and she manages those websites for me and updates everything. And so I get a report from her saying everything went fine, all sites have been updated. So it's something I don't have to do. It's something I could do. That's not a case of something I'm not capable of, but it's something I don't have to do. So I have a virtual assistant that handles that for me. And by building this team of people around you, it allows you to take on those projects that you may not be able to do if it was just you. And it allows you to delegate some tasks, which allows you to spend more time working on the client work that you can do, the reason they're coming to you. So that is a big mistake that I see a lot of freelancers or home-based designers make, is that they're not building this team of people, making the connections that will allow them to grow, because you can't do everything on your own. So that's mistake number 2. Now, mistake number 3 is not taking advantage of extra income opportunities. Now, the bulk of any designer's income should come from client design work, but there are many peripherals to that that can also earn you some money as well. I talked about print brokering back in episode 49 of the podcast. A great way to earn some money. You handle all the printing for your client and you take a markup on it. So it doesn't even cost you anything. I had just this past week, I had an existing client call me up and say, there's 2 people here that are running out of business cards. Can we reorder them? So all I did was I called up the printer that I used and I told them, can you please rerun 500 of each of these business cards and deliver them to my client? I send the printer sends me the invoice. I mark it up. I send it to my client. And the 2 minutes it took me to get the order from my client and send it off to the printer and send the invoice off, those 2 minutes, I made $40. The same goes for things like web hosting or web maintenance. You know, with all the websites that I have for clients, just the hosting and maintenance part alone, I make over $10,000 a year. And there's virtually nothing I have to do for that. Maintenance involves backing up the website, which is automated with Backup Buddy. So I never have to worry about that. It does it on its own. Security of the website is taken care of with iThemes Security. So the only thing that has to take place for a website for monthly maintenance is updating the plugins and the theme, which through iThemeSync, my virtual assistant does. And that's less than an hour a month. So through web hosting, I'm making over $10,000 a year, and I'm not lifting a finger. My virtual assistant does 1 hour per month. So for 12 hours out of the year that I pay her, I'm making $10,000. So that's extra income that I'm making, even though I'm not really doing anything. Now, other things you can do is if you are apt to it, you can create some design resources. Some people create Photoshop or Illustrator brushes or Procreate brushes. I think that's what it's called, Procreate. It's a program for tablets that some illustrators and that use. Some people create patterns or any sort of design resources, fonts and that, and sell them on places like Creative Market or Design Cuts or any of those environments and earn some extra income that way. There's also merchandising. You are a designer. You can design things, sell on t-shirts, sell on posters. Back when I was talking about mistake number 1 of not using your downtime productively, well, one of the things you can be doing in your downtime whenever you're learning these extra things in Photoshop or Illustrator is create a design that you can sell on a t-shirt. That's what I was doing. I did that with Illustrator. I was learning how to do some different things in styles. I'd watch some YouTube videos of people using Illustrator styles to create stuff beyond what I was capable of doing or knew how to do. And as I was doing these tutorials, I was actually creating something. And whenever I was done, I took that and just put it on a t-shirt and I'm selling it via Amazon. So either do that, or if you're a creative person and you want to create things and sell these merchandise, it makes some great passive income. You're a designer after all. You're a creative person. So put that creativity to work by looking around you and finding innovative ways to supplement your income with that creativity. As I said, the bulk of your income should be designing stuff for clients, but there are so many other opportunities with peripherals that can earn you money as well. So that's mistake number 3, not taking advantage of extra income opportunities. Now, mistake number 4 is not spending time working on your outreach while you're busy. I said at the beginning, there are hills and valleys when it comes to running a design business. Some weeks you have barely anything to do, and other weeks you can't believe how much work you have on your plate. Now, to minimize this up and down, up and down, up and down effect, you need to figure out how to fill those valleys with more work. Now, the problem is that most people don't think to do that. They don't think of promoting themselves. They don't think of trying to get more work until things start to slow down, until they're in one of those valleys. But that's not the time to do it. In fact, the time to promote yourself is when you're busy. You may have heard this before. It's not unique to the design industry. It's like this for any business. The time to promote yourself is when you're busy. And if you do this right, you will actually be drumming up work that will come to you during one of those valleys as things are coming down. And you can actually push off things. In some cases, when it comes to web work, if I have too many, I will tell people, yes, I will gladly do your website, but I can't start it for 2, 3, 4 weeks before I can actually get to it. And what I'm actually doing is I might see, according to my schedule, that I'm having a downtime in a couple of weeks. So I'll push this project off to fill that downtime so I can devote more time. Instead of being rushed and trying to do it right now, I'll have more time to devote to do it and do a better job during that period. And by doing that, by promoting yourself while you're busy, if you do it right and actually attract the work that'll help fill in those valleys, what you're actually doing is creating a more balanced working life for yourself. Because those hills and valleys will always be there, but they won't be as pronounced. So that's mistake number 4, is not spending the time working on your outreach when you're busy. Now, mistake number 5 is not saving money. As a home-based designer, you probably don't have a steady paycheck. In fact, you probably don't have any guarantee at all of when money will come in. That's just one of the facts of being a home-based designer or being a freelancer. Now, if you follow mistake number 4, if you correct that and promote yourself while you're busy, you will minimize those slow times when money isn't coming in, but that's still not a guarantee of income. And that's why you should be putting aside a certain percentage of your income for those quote unquote just in case or what if situations. You need savings in case one of those valleys, slow times, stretches out much longer than expected. You need savings for those unexpected expenses. Your car breaks down, your water heater breaks, your computer fails on you. These are all things you don't want to put on credit and put yourself in debt. So if you have savings put aside, you can help cover those unexpected expenses. You also need to put some savings aside because there will come a time Maybe soon, maybe someday way in the future. But there will be a time when you either decide or you're forced to stop working via voluntary or involuntary retirement. And when that time comes, how will you live when you're no longer generating an income? Now, there are lots of things we can get into with pension plans and retirement savings that I'm not going to get into all the details. I just wanted to let you know that one of the mistakes that freelancers or home-based designers make is they see all this money and they just take it and they use it for whatever without thinking of the long term, that they need to put some of this money aside. Every single check, every single payment that I receive via PayPal, via whatever, every single payment I receive, there's a percentage of it that goes into a special bank account I have, a special savings account that I don't touch. I don't use it for my regular expenses. It's there for emergencies. It's there for investing. It's there for retirement. And yes, it's there for those unexpected expenses if it's something important. Now, I also have money I put aside just to cover taxes, cover business expenses, things that come up that you know is coming. You know that at the end of the year, you have to file your taxes. Well, if you owe any money, you don't want to get that notification from your accountant that you owe this amount of money and you don't have the money to pay that off. So make sure you're putting money aside for all of these things. Now, a good rule of thumb is 15 to 20%. It's nice if you can save more than that if you're capable of it. But I would say a minimum of 10% of whatever money you pull in should be put aside to savings. But talk to your accountant. They'll be able to help you. And mistake number 6 that freelancers make is calling themselves freelancer. Now, those of you that are longtime listeners to the podcast may remember way back in episode 17, titled Being a Freelance Graphic Designer Could Hurt Your Business. Now, in that episode, I shared a story of a local designer that I know that missed out on a really good job opportunity because she was calling herself a freelancer. She had lost her job and she was doing design work for herself from home, but she really wanted to find an employer. And when she applied for this job, which would have been perfect for her, the potential employer told me, because he had actually reached out to me and I was the one that recommended this other designer to him, he told me that when he looked at her resume and saw that she was calling herself a freelancer, he wanted an employee who took the job more seriously than that. And she missed out. Now, unfortunately, he's not alone. The term freelancer is often associated with temporary or maybe in transition designers who are willing to work for you until something better comes along. Now, I know that's not the case. And I know you know that's not the case. But unfortunately, that's how many people in the business world view the word freelancer. And those people that think that way, they're your potential clients. So you don't want them to be thinking down at you because you're using the term freelancer. Look at it this way. If you look throughout history, the term freelancer usually implied somebody who's working for themselves but is looking for a boss. They don't necessarily want to become an employee, but they're looking for a boss. They're looking for somebody to direct them, somebody they can work for. So as a designer, if you imagine yourself working for a client, then maybe you are a freelancer and you can go ahead and call yourself a freelancer. However, if you imagine yourself working with a client, partnering with them in order to solve their design problems and help them grow, then you're not a freelancer. You are just a designer. And that's the key difference. A freelancer works for someone. Even though they're on their own, they're still working for someone, where a non-freelancer is working with someone. Or at least that's the way I see it, and I know so many other people that see it that way as well. So whenever somebody asks you what you do, don't tell them you're a freelance designer. Tell them you're a designer. You're a web designer, you're a graphic designer, you're a UX designer, whatever. You're a designer. If they ask, where do you work? You can say, I run my own design business. And that will have much better connotation to it than telling him you're a freelance designer. Now, I know that some people don't agree with that, but in my opinion, that is a big, big mistake that a lot of designers make, is just simply calling themselves freelancers. So there you have it. 6 mistakes that designers make. Number 1, not using downtime productively. Number 2, not building a team. Number 3, not taking advantage of extra income opportunities. Number 4, not spending time working on your outreach when you're busy. Number 5, not saving money. And number 6, simply calling yourself a freelancer. Now, I would love to know if you are guilty of making any of these mistakes, and if so, what are you going to do about it? Let me know by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 144 and leaving a comment for this episode. And now, this week's question of the week. And this week's question comes in from Chris. Now, he had a longer message here, but I'll just read the question. He says, do you have any advice for those who are starting a business focused on 3D? Have you done much work with 3D artists? Do you know of any niches that 3D graphic designers might pursue? Well, thanks for the question, Chris. And no, I haven't really done anything with 3D. I'm trying to think back if I've ever had to work with a 3D designer, and I don't think I ever have. I know I've purchased stock images of 3D images that were done by 3D designers, but I never worked with them. It was just I found an image I liked and I used it. So I can't help you on that part of it. But I did look in, when I saw your question, I did do a little bit of research to see what sort of niches, or niches, depending on how you want to say it, what sort of niches that a 3D graphic designer might pursue. And there are some really interesting ones that I saw. One of them is toy manufacturers. Actually, I got this idea from Danielle in the Facebook group, where she created a character and she was using some 3D programs to model out the toy that she's now going to have produced. So I thought that was really interesting. So somebody who is a 3D designer could offer to prototype that sort of thing, maybe get into the toy manufacturers or talk to people who have illustrations that they want to turn into 3D art. I also found video games are a huge thing. Video games and app developers, a lot of them need 3D graphic designers or 3D artists for their applications, for their programs, all of that stuff. Another big one I found was medical. There is a lot of work for 3D artists in the medical field because a lot of the textbooks, a lot of the videos, even whenever they're doing news articles or stuff like that, a lot of times they need to show organs, they need to show operations, they need to show a lot of different things in the medical industry. And a lot of that, in fact, these days, most of it is all 3D generated. Now, of course, there's always the staples of advertising agencies and video effects houses. So there's no lack of opportunity, but it's something I never really gave it much thought. I'm not into 3D. At one point, I thought it would be kind of fun to try it, but then I remembered that I really didn't have a use for it. And I did an episode way back talking about just-in-time learning. And the gist of that episode was, if there's really no use for you to learn something, why spend the time learning it? If you do need something, that's when you learn it. But learning something just for the sake of it is almost a waste of time if you don't plan on using it. And that was my case. I was curious. I wanted to learn some 3D, but I had no intention of following up with it and going into 3D graphics. So I decided not to. Now, I did find an interesting article on a website called cgdirector.com, and it talks about various ways that 3D artists can make money. So I'll actually link to that. If you visit the show notes for this episode, I'll actually have a link to that article that you can read in the show notes. So check that out if you're interested, or anybody else that's interested. Yeah, I thought it had some good suggestions there. So anyways, that's about all I can say on your question, Chris. Sorry I couldn't be of more help, but I've never done any work with a 3D artist, nor have other than the little bit of research after I got your question that I did. I hadn't ever given it much thought before. So good luck, and let me know what sort of jobs that you do end up. I'd love to hear how you are taking your abilities as a 3D artist and what you decide to do with them. So thank you very much for that question. Now, I would love to answer your question in a future episode of the podcast. You can submit yours by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and filling out the form. Now, I want to take this time to read another great iTunes review I got. This is a real short one. It came in from Jared in the USA. It says, amazing podcasts. I've learned so much with this great podcast. Always turn it on while I drive to work. Well, thank you very much for that, Jared. Always appreciate getting these reviews. And I do believe that's the last one I have to read. No more reviews. I'm still stuck at 89 reviews. I really can't wait till I get to 100. But it'll happen when it happens. Now, if you haven't left a review, you can do so by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/iTunes, which will redirect you to the iTunes store in your country, where you can leave a review for my podcast. So that's it for this episode. I want to remind you once again that time is running out if you want to join the Resourceful Designer community, which will be launching in January of 2019. You have until December 31st to sign up as a Patreon supporter at the $10 level or more to become a founding member. After December 31st, if you sign up on Patreon, I'll appreciate the pledge, but it won't get you access to the community. So to become a founding member, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/Patreon, that's Patreon, and submit your pledge before December 31st. And also don't forget that iThemes is offering a site-wide 40% off until the end of the year. So check them out if you're interested in getting WordPress plugins like Backup Buddy, iTheme Security, or using iTheme Sync for managing multiple websites the way I do. So thank you very much for tuning in. I always appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me discussing your graphic design business. I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the best, and of course, reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.